Hello everyone, welcome to part 5 of What If Sonic and Blaze Swapped Places. This is a part of a series, so if you missed the first 4 parts, go check the playlist out in the description of the video if you want to. A link to the artist's Twitter will also be down there, check them out. Also, if you like this content, consider subscribing or even becoming a member to get access to my content early. Last time we literally just covered Sonic 06. It was a very long episode. At the end of that episode, the entire timeline got reset and Blaze went on a little vacation with the members of her agency and Miles to Soliana for the Festival of the Sun. Nothing much of interest happens there, so we'll skip right ahead to when they return. Blaze decides she wants to try and collect the Chaos Emeralds, mostly just so Eggman can't get his greedy little hands on them, and Miles says that he wants to test some of the upgrades he's made to the Inferno. He has some time off from college, and he and Blaze haven't spent that much time together recently, so he asks if he can tag along. Blaze loves this idea, so the pair meet up together and fly around on the Inferno, gathering the Chaos Emeralds. I want to really quickly jump in and address a small detail here. A few people have complained about Blaze having a fear of heights and said it didn't really make sense for her to have a plane, and while that is sort of true, the tornado is really important to the plot of Sonic surprisingly, and I didn't come up with a great replacement for it. At this point, I think it's easier to just say that this version of Blaze didn't have or got over her fear of heights than it is to retcon the entire series. Maybe if I remake this entire thing at some point, I'll rewrite that so it makes a little bit more sense, but for right now, I kind of just have to leave it. Anyway, the pair track down and recover 6 of the 7 Chaos Emeralds and are approaching the 7th when they happen upon a storm. Miles tries to get them out of it, but they end up crashing and both pass out. They wake up to see a raccoon girl staring down at them, and with that, we've officially began Blaze Rush Adventure. The raccoon girl introduces herself as Marine, and they ask her what happened to their airplane. Marine says that she has no idea and then asks where they're from. Miles says that he's studying at Spagonia University, and Blaze says that she's staying in Central City, much to Marine's confusion. She's never heard of either of those places, which confuses the pair, but they think little of it. Then they ask Marine how they can get home, and Marie's eyes shine. She says that she has a way off the island, and she's been using it to explore all the islands around the area. She runs off, and Blaze and Miles follow her to her vehicle. However, once they get there, they realize that Marine may have given them a bit of a false impression. The ship is far too small to carry all 3 of them, though Marine gets pouty when Miles points this out. Marine says she built this boat all by herself and she won't let anyone make fun of her for it. Miles lights up a bit at this and says that Marine's work is really impressive for her age. He asks if she would mind working with him to upgrade the boat, but Marine says that they unfortunately can't. The place she gets materials from is blocked off by a bunch of boulders, so she can't get anything else. At that point, Blaze cuts in and says that this won't be a problem. She'll be able to get around the boulders easily. With Marine guiding them, Blaze is able to gather enough materials for Marine and Miles to upgrade the girl's boat. Marine is maybe a bit too enthusiastic the entire time though. While Miles' expertise obviously outweighs hers, she's a bit too prideful to admit that. She constantly insists that they do things her way until Miles explains to her why it won't work. In the end, it takes a bit longer than it probably should to finish upgrading Marine's boat. At that point, Blaze pulls Miles to the side for a quick talk. Blaze asks Miles if he thinks that Marine is ready for something like this. She worries that it may be just a bit too dangerous for someone like her out there, and she wants Miles' opinion on all of this. Miles says that Marine reminds him of himself when he was younger, adventurous, curious, and a lot brighter than she seems. Miles thinks that Marine's enthusiasm for adventure and building needs to be encouraged, not stifled. They just need to balance that out with giving her a bit of a reality check. Blaze smiles at Miles' response, proud of her little brother, and says that she'll let Miles make the decisions on this one. With that, they decide to check out a nearby island to look for more materials and possibly more information on where they even are. This island seems mostly peaceful, but while exploring they happen across a giant robot T-Rex which attacks them, almost hurting Marine who wasn't being careful enough before Blaze is able to deal with it. Blaze scolds Marine, though the young girl mostly brushes it off. From there, they meet a friend of Marine's that points them to an island made of machines where they could get more useful material to upgrade their boat, allowing them to travel out even further. And this is kind of just the gameplay loop of Sonic Rush Adventure for the most part. Beyond giving narrative justification to the gameplay, it also gives the crew more time to bond. We'll be skipping over a lot of the more miscellaneous adventures they go on because they won't change much from the original version of the story of this game. Honestly, this entire episode is a bit weird to write because most of the story of this game is very episodic. The TLDR is that they find a lot of wacky locations, fight some more robots, and the entire time Marine is having the time of her life. Eventually, they happen across Johnny, who challenges Blaze to a race. After some banter with Marine, Blaze races Johnny and wins, receiving a Chaos Emerald for her efforts. This is a huge relief to her and Miles, as seeing that the Chaos Emeralds were nearby as opposed to being lost once again means that Eggman hadn't had the opportunity to get a hold of them yet. Their adventures continue for a while after this, and eventually they find a strange shrine. Marine can't keep her hands to herself and starts touching stuff, which causes the ground to start trembling beneath them. An island rises out of the depths of the ocean, which they decide to investigate. They walk into the depths of the cave, observing their surroundings carefully as they do, and Blaze begins to suspect that someone else is here. She tells the others to hang back behind her and rushes forward. Deeper inside the cavern, she encounters a strange robot in front of a scepter. The robot introduces himself as Captain Whisker, and they prepare to battle. However, before they can cross blades, metaphorically speaking, someone else makes their presence known. Prince Sonic launches himself at the captain, forcing the robot to summon another giant robotic monster for them to battle. In the ensuing scuffle, the robot is able to escape with the jeweled scepter, much to Sonic's frustration. However, he doesn't have time to dwell on that. Instead, he turns to Blaze and asks her what she's doing here. Both Sonic and Blaze recognize that they have a lot to talk about after the last time they saw each other. Blaze first says that she's happy to see that Sonic is okay, and Sonic says likewise. He explains that he woke up back in his home dimension after the event with Mephiles, and while he assumed everything had gone back to normal after discovering the Soul Emeralds were working again, he had no way to confirm that. He could have traveled back to the Chaos Dimension to check, but all this stuff with Captain Whisker started up too quickly, so he was needed here. Blaze and Miles confirm that basically everything has been undone and all that business with Mephiles is behind them now. Just for the record, Blaze had filled Miles in on everything that had happened last episode after the fact, or at least the broad strokes of it. Sonic nods and says he's happy to hear that, but once again asks how they got to this dimension. Blaze and Miles are a bit taken aback by this revelation, but things start to click into place pretty quickly. This explains why they didn't recognize any of the areas they went to and why no one else they talked to ever heard of them or any of the locales they mentioned. From there, Sonic explains what the Jeweled Scepter is and why it's so important. If you don't know, it's a vaguely powerful MacGuffin that Blaze's family is tasked to watch over in canon. Blaze and Miles say that they'll help Sonic recover it immediately. Sonic doesn't say anything for a second, eyes falling onto Blaze with a look of suspicion, but he quickly agrees and thanks them for their help. Then he asks who the raccoon girl is. Marine introduces herself as their captain, to which Sonic just laughs and rolls his eyes. Marine whines a bit, but eventually Miles explains out of earshot of Marine that he's sort of taken the girl under his wing. Besides, Miles figures that she'd be more safe with them than running off and trying to do all this on her own. Sonic says that makes enough sense and says that they should get going. He doesn't want to give Whisker too long to put distance between them. They all leave together, Sonic explaining that he made his way here by simply running over the surface of the water. They spend some time trying to track down Whisker, though they mostly just find more of his underlings to fight. On their journey, there's a bit of tension. Sonic is slightly quieter around Blaze than he normally is, and after fighting against another one of Whisker's mechs, Blaze figures it's time to sort things out. She approaches Sonic while he's alone and asks him what's on his mind. Sonic says that he's just worried about the scepter being missing, but Blaze calls him out on being evasive. She says that she's noticed him giving her nasty looks here and there, and that it's clear he has a problem with her. Sonic gives up on hiding the truth from Blaze. Sonic says that he's still a bit resentful of Blaze after what happened. Learning that she was apparently royalty made him feel even more inferior to her. The thing he had spent his entire life fighting for, she had been given and didn't even need it. He envied her, and it was difficult to stop that jealousy from becoming anger. Blaze says that she understands, and she doesn't blame him for being upset, at least a little bit. She says that she thinks he's a great ruler and that he doesn't need anyone else to validate him. Sonic shakes his head, frustrated, and says that he knows that. He believes that he is the Prince of the Empire now, but that doesn't change how he feels. Blaze says that it takes time for these things to change, and that he shouldn't be too hard on himself. He's spent his entire life with these feelings. They won't go away overnight. Sonic nods and thanks Blaze for her words. Then he turns the conversation to Blaze. He asks her what it feels like to be a princess, and Blaze just kinda laughs. She says that nothing really feels any different now, and it's not like anyone treated her differently now anyway. It was probably just a distant relation if anything, so it's not all that important. Sonic just shrugs non-committally. He doesn't say it, but he has a feeling that there's just a little bit more to this. He just doesn't know what. Their journey continues until they find what they believe to be the location of the pirates' hideout, an undersea cave that Miles builds a submarine to allow them to access. They visit the cave and find out that Captain Whisker is indeed hiding there, but the inside of the cave is a massive door that they can't open. However, figuring out how to open it is pretty obvious given the symbols written on it, and after a bit of investigating, they figure out that they need to get 3 markers on nearby islands to open the way to the hideout. They quickly do all of that busy work, gearing up for what should be the final confrontation against Captain Whisker. At that point, Blaze decides to step in. She tells Miles that they can't bring Marine to face what they believe to be a serious danger in good conscience, and while Miles does want to support the younger girl, he agrees. They break the news to Marine and the girl throws a fit. There's really no other way to put it. She doesn't take being told no very well. They're all as nice as they can be when they break the news, but none of it is good enough to console Marine. Eventually, the girl runs off, crying and saying that she can't believe they think so little of her. Miles tries to go and console her, but he can't find her before they need to depart. Random interjection because I wasn't sure where else to say this. Throughout the game, you collect the Chaos Emeralds by racing Johnny over and over, which I think from a story perspective is a bit weird. I'm going to say that outside of the first Chaos Emerald, the other 6 got scattered across the islands, and Blaze would track them down over the course of the adventure. Anyway, they make their way to the pirates' hideout and enter, where they find Captain Whisker and Johnny with the jeweled scepter. Whisker gives Johnny the scepter and says to take it to their boss, while Whisker keeps the 2 preoccupied. Blaze tells Miles to go after Johnny while they take care of Whisker. Together, Blaze and Sonic manage to defeat Whisker and return to the submarine where they message Miles, asking him about what happened on his end. However, rather than hear back from the boy, they hear a panicked and shaking Marine on the other side of the line. Blaze quickly asks Marine what happened, and Marine explains. After she ran away from the group, Marine went to find their old boat to follow them in the submarine, not content to just be left on the sidelines. She was able to follow them to the area over the pirate's base and stayed there until Johnny surfaced and flew away with the scepter in hand. Marine gave chase, eventually getting the robot's attention. He remembered her from their first encounter and found the girl annoying. So he decided to take the time to sink Marine's ship and leave her to drown in the ocean. Marine is able to keep herself afloat for a while, but she quickly grows tired and she's too far away from land to swim. Marine begins to panic, terror starting to set in. She calls for help desperately while Johnny just laughs at her. However, hope wasn't completely lost. Marine sees a boat on the horizon, speeding towards them. Marine calls out to it, and Miles flies out of the ship towards Marine. Johnny flies towards Miles to fight him, and Miles throws a device at Marine before fighting back against Johnny. The device expands into a life preserver, allowing Marine to swim back to the boat unharmed. After climbing aboard, she turns to see that Miles and Johnny are still fighting, seemingly neck and neck. Seeing Miles getting hurt upsets Marine though, so she steers the boat closer to Johnny and prepares to attack. As soon as he sees this, Miles tells Marine to run away instead, but Marine says that she's not going to abandon him. She gets closer to Johnny, grabbing a harpoon gun Miles had on the ship and aiming it at him. But once she's close enough, Johnny knocks Miles away and launches himself at Marine. He attacks her, launching her across the boat and saying that she should have listened to the fox. He grabs the harpoon gun and aims it at Marine, firing at the girl. Miles is just fast enough to pull Marine out of the way, but it puts him off balance. Johnny gets a clean hit in on Miles and knocks him unconscious. With Miles dealt with, Johnny turns back to Marine, ready to finish her off. But right at the moment, he gets word that Whisker's been defeated and that Blaze and Sonic are likely on their way. Johnny decides that Marine isn't worth it and grabs Miles before blasting off, leaving Marine behind. After explaining what happened, Marine breaks down and apologizes to Blaze. She says that Blaze was right about her, that she's not ready for this kind of thing. It's her fault that Miles is gone now. She was okay with putting herself in danger, but she never considered that she might be putting other people at risk too. Blaze is hurt by this news, but she's trying her best to stay calm. She tells Marine that it's going to be okay. Blaze says that Miles is far more valuable to them alive than he is dead, and they'll get him back. She tells Marine to stay where she is and they'll come get her. With that, she hangs up and wordlessly begins to pilot the submarine to the surface before Sonic speaks up. Sonic says that Blaze should let him take the reins for a bit. She's probably worried sick about her brother. Blaze says it's fine, but Sonic insists on either taking over or talking to Blaze about what's going on. Blaze snaps at him and says that there's nothing to talk about. Of course, her outburst betrays her true feelings, and she relents. She allows Sonic to pilot the submarine and goes to rest. As she does, Sonic assures her that they're going to get Miles back. Soon, they're together with Marine once again. They switch over to the boat as it's faster than the submarine, and Marine says that she's okay with staying behind now. Sonic says that, well, he's happy that Marine learned a lesson or whatever. That's not really an option. It's not safe for her out in the ocean alone, and she can't pilot the submarine back to land safely. Since they're going to need the boat to catch up with Johnny, Marine is going to have to stay with them. It's ultimately safer than the other options. With that, Sonic takes off at max speed, following after Johnny. On the way over, things are quiet. Blaze notices that Marine is avoiding her, and she wants to comfort her, but she's too worried about Miles' well-being to really focus on much else. After an awkward boat ride over, they manage to catch up with Johnny as he boards a large boat that none of them recognize. They climb aboard, Marine's still with them as they reason that's safer than leaving her alone, and they instantly recognize the decor. Eggman's face is everywhere, and Blaze can't help but sigh. Of course he's behind this somehow. They descend further into the ship in search of the Jeweled Scepter and, of course, Miles. Eventually, they make their way to Eggman. Just Eggman. Negative is not here because he is a fraud and annoying, and I hate his name and him. Eggman starts his normal gloating shtick, talking about harnessing the power of the stars, and Blaze asks if they can just skip to the part where she beats the living daylights out of him for daring to hurt her brother. Eggman scoffs, and they begin the battle. Eggman launches into one of his giant mechs, this one powered by the Jeweled Scepter, and Blaze goes into Brilliant Blaze and Sonic into Tempest for the confrontation. The battle takes them off of the ship, deep into the core of the planet as Eggman attempts to harness its energy for his own purposes. Eventually, they're able to overwhelm Eggman, and it looks like they've won against him once again when he announces that he has one last trick up his sleeve. Eggman activates a device aboard his mech, which announces that there are 30 seconds until detonation. Eggman explains that he rigged his ship to explode, and that Marine and Miles are helplessly stuck on the ship with Johnny to stop them from escaping. Eggman gloats that they can either save their friends or stop him from using the Jeweled Scepter. They're both shocked, but Sonic says that stopping Eggman is more important. If they don't stop him here, everyone will be in danger. Blaze is conflicted, but she agrees. She thinks to herself that if they defeat Eggman quickly enough, they can go save Miles and Marine anyway. They both attack Eggman, destroying his mech in a matter of seconds. As soon as the fight looks like it's over, Blaze barrels past Sonic towards Eggman's ship. She travels from the center of the planet all the way to the surface in less than a second, anticipating that the explosion will be coming at any moment. However, Blaze makes her way onto the ship and to Marine and Miles without any incident. Blaze grabs the unconscious Miles and Marine and pulls them to their own ship, Marine wailing the entire time. Once they're safe, Blaze takes a moment to breathe. Marine pipes up, complaining about Blaze being too rough, and Blaze explains what happened. Once she finishes her explanation, Marine puts on a cheeky smile and says that Blaze had no reason to worry about any of that. At this point, Sonic has made his way back to the surface, and he asks why the boat didn't blow up, and Marine explains that while they were fighting Eggman, Johnny discovered that the boat was rigged to self-destruct. The robot fled in fear, and Marine decided that the only course of action was to try and disarm the self-destruct sequence. Miles' guidance had taught her a lot, especially when it came to Eggman's machine, so Marine was able to disarm everything without incident. Blaze and Sonic are impressed, and everyone is relieved that everything is finally over. Once Miles wakes up and recovers, he says that he can probably build them a machine to transport them back to the Chaos Dimension. Blaze is happy to see that Miles is safe once again, but the one most affected by it is actually Marine. She apologizes over and over for getting Miles hurt, and says that she'll never put anyone else in harm's way ever again. Miles consoles the girl and says that while she did mess up, she has potential. Disarming the bomb on Eggman's ship took a lot of skill, and what Marine did was very brave. It was just kind of stupid. She needs to be less reckless, but she shouldn't give up on her dreams just yet. Marine hugs Miles and thanks him for helping her, and Sonic says he supposes that he needs to keep an eye on Marine from now on. She's gonna need somebody to try and keep her out of trouble. Blaze laughs and jokes that Sonic won't exactly help with that, and Sonic gives her a good-natured shove. Marine says she's going to get stronger and smarter, and someday she'll be as cool as Miles is. Miles says that he can't wait to see her again. A few days later, Miles has finished the portal back to their world, and Blaze has gathered all the Chaos Emeralds once again. Everyone says their final goodbyes, and Miles and Blaze return to their dimension. Things are slow for a little while after Blaze and Miles return to the Chaos Dimension. Blaze runs some odd jobs at the agency, the type of thing the Chaotix normally did before being hired by Blaze, and Miles simply returns to college to study. Blaze wonders briefly if Eggman was actually done for good this time, but she knows the Doctor is too tenacious. He'd survived his mech exploding so many times at this point that Blaze wasn't sure if she'd even be able to actually put him down for good. Not to mention that she would prefer capturing and arresting him to harming him directly. Eggman wasn't one to disappoint, it seemed, as Blaze got wind of his forces moving once again in just a few weeks. Blaze is done with waiting for Eggman to attack at this point. She grabs the 7 Chaos Emeralds and tells Amy to look after the agency. She's going to hit Eggman fast and hard, and they'll all be her backup if things go wrong. Amy and the Chaotix all say they're ready, and Blaze runs off to fight Eggman. This leads us into the intro of Blaze Unleashed, and things go about the same in this opening cutscene. Blaze fights through waves of badniks, goes into Brilliant Blaze to fight against Eggman, but gets stopped and the energy of the Chaos Emeralds is harnessed and used to awaken Dark Gaia. Worse, Blaze absorbs some of Dark Gaia's energy and transforms into what can only be described as a more monstrous form. After Blaze gets transformed, the planet splits open as it does in the intro to the game, and Blaze falls back to Earth for the second time in this story. When she pushes herself up, she comes face to face with a small, excitable creature who seems to be a bit out of it. Blaze asks if they're okay, and the little guy freaks out when he sees Blaze, which Blaze does her best to not take too personally. Eventually, they're able to have an actual conversation, and Blaze learns that the creature has lost his memory and doesn't even remember his name. Blaze explains that she got transformed into this thing by Eggman, who also split the Earth into separate pieces. On top of all of that, the Chaos Emeralds seem to have lost their power. The little guy and Blaze decide to work together to try and fix all of this. The sun begins to come up and Blaze's form actually remains the same. This is a change from canon, where Sonic's Werehog form changed with the time of day, but I think this is more interesting story-wise for a few reasons you'll see soon. After a little while, Blaze decides that her new friend can't just not have a name. So she floats a few ideas for names by the little guy, who ends up rejecting all of them. Eventually, they end up buying some ice cream, and Blaze's new friend gets the nickname Chip for the time being. However, Blaze's form is gathering a lot of unwanted attention. People are staring at her, and while no one is outright aggressive, Blaze can't help but feel a bit self-conscious. Rather than focus on all of that, Blaze decides to be more productive. They needed to find a way to fix the remnants of the planet, and the best person she knew to try and do something like that would be Miles, who was staying in Spagonia. It's a bit of a ways away, but they should be able to make it there on foot. Unfortunately, she can't get in contact with any of her friends thanks to basically all communication going down as a result of the world kind of breaking. That night, Gaia's minions attack, and Blaze fights them back on behalf of the townsfolk around her. After she's done fighting, she hears the sound of a struggle nearby. Suspecting another clash is occurring similar to the one she just finished, Blaze runs towards the source of the noise to see Amy of all people fighting back a horde of the monsters. Amy has successfully fought off most of the horde, but there's still a number of Gaia's minions left. Blaze figures she might as well make herself useful. Blaze helps Amy fight off the rest of the group, and when they're done, Amy looks at her with a confused expression. Amy asks if Blaze is different from the others she's been fighting. Blaze hesitates for a moment before asking if Amy recognizes her. The girl is still for a second before shock colors her features. She tentatively asks Blaze if that's her, and Blaze nods. Amy asks Blaze what happened, and Blaze explains the recent events to her. Amy decides right then and there that she wants to help Blaze on her journey, which Blaze accepts. Soon they all find their way to Spagonia University. There they meet up with Miles once again and explain what's happened. Miles is concerned by Blaze's new form, worried that it may be hazardous to her in some way, but Blaze says that she feels perfectly fine. Miles still asks to run some tests just in case, which Blaze acquiesces to. While Miles is running all of his tests, they discuss what they need to do about all of this. Miles says that Professor Pickle had been kidnapped by Eggman, likely due to his expertise in this field. Miles had tried to protect him, but he was too busy fighting for the civilians against the forces of Dark Gaia at the same time, so he was unable to stop Eggman from taking the professor. Blaze says that she'll go rescue the professor and invites Amy along with her. They fight through Eggman's forces and eventually find Professor Pickle trapped inside of one of Eggman's cells. They free him, but before they leave, he asks them to grab something important from one of Eggman's vaults. Blaze grabs the manuscript he asked for, and they all return to Spagonia University. Once there, Pickle explains in more detail what exactly is going on. He tells them all about Dark Gaia, a creature deep within the Earth core that would wake up every several million years, destroy almost all life on Earth, and then it would go back to sleep and the world would reform afterward. Eggman seems to have awoken Dark Gaia early, attempting to harness its energy for his own purposes. He then explains how they can use the energy of the planet to restore the Chaos Emeralds, and how this will repair the planet in the process. Blaze thanks him for the exposition and then asks Miles what the results of his experiments were. Miles says that Blaze's new form is the result of Dark Gaia's energy, from what he learned from Professor Pickle. The energy doesn't seem to be harming Blaze, but he has no idea how they could transform Blaze back to her original form. He says it's gonna be a while before he can figure anything out. Blaze nods and says that they should get to work on restoring the planet. Amy leaves with her and they go to restore the Chaos Emeralds. From here, things go pretty close to canon. Blaze, Amy, and Chip all travel together to each of the temples to restore the Chaos Emeralds. Early on in their travels, Chip sees an ice cream store and demands they go buy some. Blaze tries to argue against this, but Amy tells her they can take a break every now and then, and Blaze relents. This ends up becoming a bit of a tradition as they visit new locations around the world, stopping by to sample their snacks and having a generally good time with each other. Blaze and Amy spend a lot of time showing Chip various things on the Earth, as he knows shockingly little about their world. Chip is enamored by everything he sees, and over time, Blaze finds herself to grow quite fond of the little guy. Unfortunately, things aren't all great. Blaze does keep getting bad reactions from people as she walks around. Even worse now that people have actually seen Dark Gaia's minions. People connect the dots, and Blaze is even approached by some and yelled at. Amy stands up for her each and every time, which does help, but it still takes a toll on Blaze to be judged like this. Over their travels, she also checks in on Miles and asks for updates on his research, and he finds a few things of note. For one, he finds that Gaia is supposed to be two entities, not one, and that the other half of Gaia appears to be missing, something that intrigues the entire group. However, when it comes to helping Blaze reach her normal form, he hasn't found anything of use, even with Professor Pickle's help. Blaze says that she appreciates him trying anyway. This continues until they reach the 6th Temple of Gaia, at which point a mural has a strange reaction to Chip. He's drawn to it, and while Blaze warns him to be careful, he touches it as if on instinct and is sucked inside the wall. Blaze and Amy call out for him, rushing to the mural and trying to follow Chip inside, but it doesn't work. The pair stand there, at a loss for what to do for a few moments, before the mural lights up again and Chip returns. Blaze scolds Chip for being so reckless, but instead of complaining or whining like he normally would, Chip says that he's glad that Blaze is looking out for him, but he was always perfectly safe. His tone of voice and demeanor shake Blaze. Chip was behaving completely differently now, and Blaze had no idea why. Blaze and Amy ask Chip what happened, and Chip answers that he regained his memories. From there, Chip explains that he is the missing half of Gaia Miles mentioned. His memories were locked away thanks to awakening early, and he says that he alone has to fight against Dark Gaia. Blaze and Amy both reject this idea, saying simply that they're not going to allow a friend to face something like this alone. Chip is thankful for their help, and they all decide to head to the final Gaia temple together. On their journey there, Amy notices Blaze acting strange. It seems almost as if she's avoiding them, and Blaze slinks off alone after they find an inn to stay at that night. Amy decides to follow Blaze and asks her what's wrong. Blaze tries to deflect, but Amy doesn't really have time for any of that. She asks Blaze directly if she's willing to talk about what's on her mind or not, and Blaze eventually decides to confide her feelings in Amy. Blaze admits that she's worried she's going to be stuck like this forever. Miles hadn't found any way to fix this despite working on it all this time. Blaze had talked to Chip after he remembered who he really was, and even he said that he didn't know how to fix Blaze's condition. He just said that he had faith that everything would be fine in the end, and that wasn't good enough for Blaze right now. Blaze admits that she hates how everyone looks at her now, hates feeling like a monster again. Her frustration boils over, and Blaze says that she's so tired of feeling like this no matter how hard she tries to help people. Amy says that no matter how she looks, Amy will still be there for Blaze. So will Miles and Vector and the rest of his team, and so will Rouge and Shadow and all of them. All of their friends will support Blaze no matter what. Blaze is silent, before pointing out that when she first saw her, Amy didn't even recognize her. It's said bitterly, in accusation. Amy is a bit shocked by Blaze's tone, but she can tell how hurt the girl is. Amy admits that she didn't recognize Blaze at first, but she knew right away that Blaze was different, because she fought for her, because of what she did, because who she was still shined through despite everything. Amy apologizes for hurting Blaze, but wants to be there for her no matter what, just like Blaze was always there for her. Blaze is silent for a while, thinking over Amy's words, and eventually she asks Amy a question. She asks if Amy would still love her like this, if this was how Blaze was for the rest of her life. Amy is surprised that Blaze would ask something like that, but she says that she would love Blaze no matter what. She gets a little flustered when she admits that she still feels that way about Blaze even now. Blaze, for what may be the first time, is the one to initiate contact between them when she hugs Amy, thanking her for being there for her all this time. Amy hugs Blaze back, and the two return to the inn to get a night of rest before confronting Eggman. The next day, the trio arrives at Eggman Land, which Eggman had constructed around the final Gaia temple. From there, the rest of the plot of the game is essentially just an extended action sequence. They succeed in restoring the final emerald, but Dark Gaia is able to form anyway. It sucks up all of its energy across the globe, most of which had been collected by Eggman to make Eggman Land, which returns Blaze to her normal form while also allowing Dark Gaia to become perfect Dark Gaia. Blaze goes Brilliant Blaze, and Chip combines all of the Gaia temples into a Megazord to fight Dark Gaia. It takes everything they have, but Chip and Blaze are just barely able to defeat Dark Gaia and stop it from completely destroying the world. The fight takes such a toll on Blaze that she passes out, and Chip is barely able to get her to Amy on the surface before the final continent slots into place. Chip says that he's happy to have met all of them, and that they made his short time on the planet meaningful, but he has to go back to the center of the world until it's time to reawaken once again. Amy says her goodbye and brings Blaze back to Spagonia, where Miles and the professor are. The next day, Blaze wakes up. Amy explains to her what happened, and Blaze admits she's saddened that she didn't get to say goodbye to Chip herself. Amy says that she likes to think that Chip is still watching over them. Blaze says that technically he's below them, but she gets what Amy means, earning her a glare from the other girl. Amy gets up to leave, but Blaze stops her. Amy asks what she needs, and Blaze stammers out that she'd like to go somewhere with Amy later. Maybe like ice cream or something, if she wants to, she means. It takes just a second for Amy to realize what's happening, and Amy asks Blaze if she's asking to go on a date with her. Blaze says that their talk earlier had made her realize that Amy had always been there for her, and Blaze was realizing just how much Amy really meant to her. Amy accepts Blaze's offer readily, and the two start going out after that. That's right, everyone, Blaze/Amy is now officially canon in this AU. I know that's what half of you are really here for anyway. I see all your comments. I know what you freaks want. I say as if I wasn't the one setting this up for the past 3 episodes. Anyway, that's where we'll be ending this episode. Next episode will probably be the end of the series for now. I have some pretty big ideas for what I want to do, and I want to end the series with a bang. I will say this video was a bit weird to write, admittedly. Rush Adventure and Unleashed are some of the most episodic games in the franchise, and they don't lend themselves super well to this kind of writing. I hope I did a good enough job for you guys, at least. Anyway, quick shout out to all my YouTube members. Bait Testarasa, Joseph Florian, Megasonic Bros, Sonic Storm, Bokabara, Agent B7, and Elric111.